Thank you all for coming. So I'm Jordan Lachler. This is Darren Flavelle. That's Marianne Huijsmans. First off, I want to thank Tim and Lex and Nick and Craig for their contributions to our presentation here. We are all from CILDI, the Canadian Indigenous Languages and Literacy Development Institute at the University of Alberta. I also want to thank David for giving us the perfect lead-in to our presentation, as you will hopefully see. So we have already been talking already at this conference and hearing lots of really good presentations about the role of community members in language documentation and how this has been evolving over the last half century or so, from purely sources of information to becoming consultants, to becoming collaborators, and hopefully, and in some cases already, into project leaders. And a key element in this evolution is the training that community members receive, right? That gives them the skills that they need in order to fulfill each of these evolving roles. And so that's our jam. So at CILDI, what we do is, or one of the things that we do, is we run a 3-week summer school each year for Indigenous language activists on campus in Edmonton, back home in Alberta. This was our 25th anniversary year. And our courses focus on a range of skills related to all areas of language revitalization. So documentation, linguistic analysis, community language planning, language pedagogy, language technology, assessment, and so on and so forth. So not simply just skills needed just for documentation, but for revitalization more broadly. So in our presentation here today, we're going to share a few of the insights that I think we collectively have learned over the last 25 years. So I'll start by giving you a quick overview of our Community Linguist Certificate program. Then we will talk about some of the key aspects of the student experience, and then we'll look ahead to kind of what comes next. I know those people. So the CLC, the Community Linguist Certificate Program. So this started in 2007, and it's a series of 6 3-credit courses focused on skills related particularly to documentation and revitalization. And over the last, 17 years, we've had almost 200 students complete all 6 of these training courses. Some through our summer school, some through our in-community courses, some through online, some through a mix of all of the above. So for people who take it in the summer school, they take it over 3 summers, 2 courses each summer. In summer number 1, they take Planning for Language Sustainability, which is our sort of our LPP class, teaching them about the basics of community language planning. And the second course they take is Technologies for Language Documentation, which is everything we've all just been talking about, right? What are the basic documentary skills that community members need in order to really fulsomely participate in language documentation programs? So they get both of those in their first summer. Second summer, we dive into the linguistics. So we get Linguistics for Language Revitalization, introducing basic concepts in linguistics. And then our Ling 211, which is how to describe sounds and sound patterns in your own language. You come back for summer number 3, you get into word and sentence patterns. You get into the morphosyntax. So this is where people start to look at the grammar and the word structure and sentence structure in their own languages. So that's a very quick run through of what our Community Linguist Certificate program looks like. And I will now turn it over to Marianne for some of the insights.
Great, thank you. So with 25 years behind us, there's many, many different things we could have reflected on, but we decided to focus on student experience because the students are the heart of CILDI, and when their experience is good and when they're bringing something home, that's when we know that CILDI is succeeding. So the students that come to CILDI are unlike your typical undergraduate. They have very deep motivations for wanting to be there. They really want to bring something back home to their home. I mean, that's not to say that we don't have great undergraduates, but I mean, the depth of the depth, yes. They really want this training and they really want to bring something useful back to their home communities. They really care about bringing their languages back. But they also face very different and serious challenges. They come from very diverse educational backgrounds. Not all of them have finished high school, for instance. They're not familiar with the city and the institution. And just being within the institution can trigger residential school trauma, I think very often does. So this is something they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis when they're at the school. And so, yeah, they just face very different challenges than our typical undergraduates. And so it's really important to us that CILD supports them to the absolute best of our capabilities. And one of the ways that we do this is by trying to remove barriers to their access and their success within the university. And of course, university bureaucracies are notoriously unfriendly. So one of the things that CILD has worked very hard to do is to streamline the processes and support students in all of the administrative aspects. So enrolling at the university, in applying for bursaries, in their letters of acceptance, paying tuition fees, finding accommodation. So all these processes are unfamiliar to most of the students that come to CILD and could be major barriers, but we've really tried to streamline that process and make sure that, that they are able to come. And then the time in class, we really try to tailor this to the motivations and the interests of the students and the learning styles of the students. So the learning is very hands-on and interactive, and we try to always relate it back to their own language revitalization work. And so we do things like in the phonetics class, they're using Praat and getting to visualize some of the language. They're doing this work themselves and then reflecting on how that might be useful in their work in terms of analyzing sounds or developing orthography. They practice creating recordings. They create a presentation of the sounds in their language and give this to the classmates, and then that's also something they might be able to use if they're a teacher of the language. So these types of really kind of hands-on projects. And then we try to be very flexible with the medium of the assignment. So these are oral cultures, so some of the students are much more comfortable giving oral presentations than written ones. But then some students are also shy. They don't want to be up in front of the class. So we try to give options for what's going to work best for different students. And then in the content of the assignments that they can focus on something that's relevant to their revitalization work. Another thing that we wanted to mention is that we have what we call VESPAs, our volunteer summer program assistants. These are amazing undergraduate and graduate students from the University of Alberta and sometimes beyond who come and volunteer with our students. They really provide a lot to this program. They give this one-on-one support to the students who are coming for CILD. For all kinds of things. They help them troubleshoot when they're having technical difficulties with the computer. They are a voice, they're an ear that just is there when the students have, a frustrating day. They help them find their way around campus, all kinds of things. So we really can't emphasize enough how important these volunteers have actually been to the program.
Yeah. So the next thing that part of the title of this whole presentation was the co-creation of the knowledge, right? So we don't use this traditional style where the instructors know everything, you all know nothing, we're gonna give you everything you need to know. That is not how it works in communities, that is not how it works in life. So we teach them what we know, they teach us what they know, and we learn together growing up with that, right? So we have to have both students and instructors talking back and forth in a collaborative dialogue. And the students, right, they relate the content back to their lived experiences, back to what's important for their communities, back to what they enjoy talking about in their homes, what they need in their homes. And, we see, okay, that's an example of this linguistic concept. Oh, you guys have reduplication in your system here, or you guys, this phonological rule occurs here. How does that work for you? And then they say, oh, that's cool, I never noticed that, or my grandmother does it this way, or whatever. It's interesting, and you get to learn about their lives, about their communities, about themselves, and they get to learn how they can apply all this stuff that we have to offer in their own home communities. Right, so ideally, those communities will grow. So with this environment, right, language activists, who are most commonly the people that come to CILD, they are often in their home communities alone. They just know this is important. It is important, my language is important, our culture is important, but they're just the ones doing it. Their whole community is like, yeah, you're right, you do it. But when they come to CILD, and they meet other people from different communities across Canada and sometimes abroad that really grows their own community that they can then discuss with, think, oh, you were having a problem with that in your home community? I mitigated that in mine by doing this. Maybe you can try that in your home community. And so they get to learn from each other as much as they learn from us. But when the summer is over, the work does not stop. They have learned a lot, and they get to go back to their home communities, and they create language corpora. They, record stuff for the future generation. They've done that at CILD, and they can go home and continue doing that with the skills that they've learned. They often use these things and we have examples from the past 25 years of people who have, started writing their own textbooks, creating curricula back home for where they live, because a lot of them are the language teachers of the places. But we know just because you can speak a language doesn't mean you can teach a language. So we provide some of that knowledge, and they get to build on that knowledge and go home and help build it further. So some of them have also thought this was really good, but it's not enough, which is fair, because you cannot learn everything you need to know in 3 summers and 9 weeks. I wish we could, but we can't. So they have gone on to do further degrees. They know, oh, that was interesting to me. I like that aspect of it. I'm going to focus on that aspect of it. And we have them growing and, continuing. And what does this really do? What are the ripple effects of this training that we've seen so far? Like I said, they bring the tools and connections and ideas back to the communities. They pass them on to other community members, and they can create their own cohorts, which they have done, and then they say, that was really good for me. But there are 25 more people in my community that could not afford or don't have the time or have families or other obligations. We need to go back, or rather, you need to come here to my community, like up in the Northwest Territories or other small mountain villages, and provide us there. So we do. We have a summer school, but we also doing community work. And with that, I'm going to pass it on back to Jordan while we look ahead to the future.
So we've been at CILD doing this for 25 years. We are far from the only organization of our type. We have sister institutes in the US, in Australia, and other places around the world that have been at this even longer than we have. But as is not uncommon among academics, right, we do too much of this work in silos, right? We do our work in Canada, the Australians do their work in Australia, the Americans do their work in the US, and we haven't over these years had this opportunity to have what the language documentation community has created over the last 30 years, which is this network of conferences and journals and in fact, entire master's programs and PhD programs that specifically train people how to do this. So those of us who are on the revitalization training side of things, we're a few steps behind. And so we take some inspiration from our friends in the documentary community. And so one of our things we're really working on quite vigorously at the moment is to try to build this global network among those who provide this type of training, which includes many people in this room. Because we want to consult about best practices, about how this type of training is most successful in different contexts. We want to share curriculum design across all of these different topics and all these different skill areas that people need to master in order to really have the capacity within their communities to take leadership of these types of projects. And then tackling issues of professional recognition. I have stories to tell about that, where you spend your whole career just focusing on training community members and then try to say, but yes, I should also get tenure. So there's other issues. But so we're working on that sort of global network to try to bring us all together to strengthen the work that we do. But for ourselves, narrowing back down to just CILD, we know that our certificate, as useful as it has been, is just the beginning. And so we are currently pushing towards having our university give us a 2-year diploma where the people who get hooked on it through the certificate program can come. If they can give us 2 years, we can give them, we hope, most everything that they would need, all of those skills from pedagogy to technology to documentation, everything that they would really need in order to take those leadership roles. For folks who want to do just a little bit here and there, we're looking at micro-credentials. And this past summer, we started a new graduate certificate program for people who are at that higher level of education.
Yeah, so we're really excited for the opportunity to talk to everyone here and abroad and elsewhere on Zoom. Hello.
Hi, Zoom.
And get this going. So with that, thank you. And many different types of thank yous.
Yeah.
So we have plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question about the certificate program. So you said it was 3 summers. I was just wondering, given that they're sparse so far apart, like 8 months in between the trainings, are the community members actually retaining, the skills that they learned from the previous summers? And if not, how do you guys kind of like mitigate that issue to make sure that they're continuing to use those skills? Because it's just like, I know with anything else, you have to continually use it before it actually sinks in, especially with like language documentation skills.
Completely, yeah. I will be the first to admit we have a very imperfect pedagogical model because that is when, folks are available to come. Right? So many of our students are teachers in the community, right? And that's the time. That's why we have a summer school and not a fall school or a spring school. So this is a clear challenge for us and for the students to try to retain this information. One of the steps we've taken just this past year is developing online refresher courses. So like, hey, you took these courses last summer. You can keep checking your notes and looking back, and then before you come for summer number 2, go through this, online modules. Go here, remember this term, remember how this thing worked. Okay, get that back. Okay, now you're ready to hopefully hit the ground running. So we've just been starting to pilot those this year, and we're hoping to see what kind of impact that has for the students to help them in their progression as they keep learning. But I will say, our students are so committed and so many of them are just working in language on a day-to-day basis anyway, that they do have lots of opportunities in their daily life to use a lot of the skills that they're learning. But it's a challenge for sure. Yeah.
Thank you for this really exciting presentation. The authors of this presentation are already a large group. And you mentioned also that there are lots of volunteers who are participating too.
Yeah. I'm
wondering how many people you think is necessary to operate this kind of program.
248. I mean, it's a lot. It depends. It really depends on. I've been director for 13 years, and there were times when it was me and an undergrad assistant for 10 hours a week, and then a few contract teachers who would come in and do things. We've been very fortunate over the last few years to be able to grow our team and expand so we can offer more courses and go to more communities and do things. But the demand, the need is enormous, and even just in our little area of the world, we're just scratching the surface. So I'll start with 248, and then I'll get back to you. Yeah.
We would have time for another short question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask you if you could share some, if there are some experiences of students of how this being a certificate and maybe not an undergraduate or master's course has affected them in terms of whether it helped them to get some funding or the opposite, whether they found barriers with it.
Excellent. Yes. So the certificate, it's a provincially recognized certificate. So a lot of the students are able, if they're working in the school system, a lot of them are able to take that certificate to their school board and get a raise. So that's always a good thing. And for other folks, they have used their experience at SILDI to put together grant applications for their community, and being able to say, yes, I have done this training before, I am familiar, I know how to put these things together, has helped them to receive that funding. And for others, like our friends at Alexis First Nation, we had a group of those students who came to the summer school, they got their certificate, and they then decided that they needed everyone else in their community to have it too, because there was this bottleneck of like 2 or 3 people who had all of these skills, and that was not enough. And so over the last decade or so, we've been partnering with that community to deliver more of those in-community classes so that more and more people in the community have that basic level of skills. And so when it, all of the questions don't fall on just 1 or 2 people, and that they may eventually be able to retire and not have the rest of us track them down to keep doing the work.
Okay, so then let's thank our speakers again.